Hey everyone. So, have you ever just stared at a biology exam question asking why the two strands of DNA are complementary instead of just being, identical copies of each other and felt completely stuck? Honestly, it's one of the ultimate, most foundational questions in biology, and today we're going to absolutely master it. Welcome to this high-energy study guide explainer. We're going to take the source material and break it down visually step by step. By the time we wrap up, you won't just be memorizing the answer, you'll completely understand the structural and biological genius of DNA. So grab your notebooks and let's get into it.
Right off the bat, before we get into all the complex mechanics of the double helix, we really need to lay down our foundation. What exactly does the word complementary mean when we're talking about DNA? Well, in this context, complementary simply means that each nucleotide on one strand pairs with a very specific nucleotide on the opposite strand. They aren't twins, right? They're perfect matching partners. Think of them kind of like two halves of a zipper that are uniquely designed to interlock with one another. If you can really grasp this core definition, you're already halfway to acing this topic.
Here is your cheat sheet for today's explainer. First up, base pairing rules. Second, double helix structure. Third, genetic copying and replication. And finally, we'll finish off with some practice exam questions to test what we've learned. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Base pairing rules.
These right here are the absolute, non-negotiable, golden rules of DNA. I highly encourage you to mentally lock in this simple visual relationship for your exam. Adenine, which we just call A, always, and I mean always, pairs with thymine, represented by T. And right below that, guanine, or G, strictly pairs with cytosine, or C. It is a highly exclusive relationship, guys. A is with T, G is with C. There is literally no mixing and matching outside of these boundaries. This strict adherence, that is the very definition of complementary base pairing.
Moving right along to Section 2, double helix structure.
So you might be wondering, why do A and T and G and C pair up so perfectly? Well, it isn't just magic, right? It all comes down to some exact physical forces. First, it's due to the specific shapes of the bases. They actually physically fit together like puzzle pieces. Second, it's all about their hydrogen bonding abilities. These chemical bonds act like the glue that holds those two complementary puzzle pieces securely in place. The shapes allow them to align flawlessly, and the hydrogen bonds stabilize that connection.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is thinking about what would happen if nature had simply made both strands identical. Well, if they were identical copies, they literally could not pair up properly. Those specific shapes and hydrogen bonds just wouldn't align, and the famous, iconic double helix structure would simply fail to form. It would just fall apart. But because the strands are complementary, the pairing rules work flawlessly, and the double helix structure is perfectly maintained.
All right, Section 3. Genetic copying and replication.
Let's make this practical. Imagine sitting in your exam room and your professor hands you this exact sequence. We've got an original strand sequence reading from the 5' end to the 3' end, ATG CCTA. And the question asks you to figure out the corresponding sequence for the opposite strand. How do we solve this? Well, we just apply the exact rules we literally just went over. Let's move to and see how this builds piece by piece. Step 1. We read our original strand. Step 2. We apply our base pairing rules to build the complementary strand, reading the other way, from 3' to 5'. So where there's an A, we write a T. Where there's a T, we write an A. G becomes C, C becomes G, the next C becomes G, T becomes A, and finally A becomes T. And just like that, boom, you've perfectly translated the original strand into the complementary strand, TACGGAT. You just absolutely aced that exam question.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate why this matters takeaway for this entire topic. Seriously, why does the body go through all this trouble to have complementary pairs? It's for the accurate replication and transfer of genetic information. When our cells divide, they have to copy their DNA. Because the strands are complementary, one strand can serve as a perfect, foolproof template to build a brand new, identical DNA molecule. It's basically this genius evolutionary mechanism that ensures our genetic code is copied flawlessly from generation to generation.
Okay, let's lock this in. Section 4. Practice exam questions. Let's do a quick fire pop quiz. All right, let's see how much you've retained. Don't worry, you've totally got this. Question number 1. Think back to our golden base pairing rules from earlier in the explainer. According to the strict rules of DNA, what specific nucleotide does adenine, or A, always pair with? Shout it out if you know it. It's thymine, T. Awesome job if you got that right. Just remember, A and T are a totally exclusive pair. They're absolutely inseparable in that DNA double helix. Moving right along to question number 2.
We know the rules now, but what physical mechanics actually make them happen? What two specific factors are responsible for the base pairing rule? Think about the physical architecture we talked about.
The answers are, number 1, specific shapes, and number 2, hydrogen bonding abilities. The shapes allow them to literally fit together, and those crucial hydrogen bonds act as the stabilizing glue holding the whole double helix tightly together.
And now for our final big picture question. This is the big essay question on your exam, guys. Why is complementary base pairing crucial rather than just having identical strands? What is the core biological purpose of this entire system?
So, the crucial point is it ensures the accurate replication and transfer of genetic information. If the strands were identical, they just wouldn't bond, the helix wouldn't form, and the cell would have 0 reliable templates to flawlessly copy its genetic blueprint. Complementarity is quite literally the key to life's continuity.
Let's wrap things up with this definitive quote directly from our source material. Both strands are not identical, but are complementary to maintain the structure and function of DNA. It is such a wonderfully simple rule, right? Just A with T and G with C. Yet it governs literally the most complex biological processes on Earth. I want to leave you with this thought. Isn't it just mind-blowing how a simple physical rule of shapes and bonds flawlessly dictates the entire blueprint of life within you? Keep that in mind the next time you look at a double helix.